They said, I don't plan to be with the company more than 5 years. That was really sort of a sobering moment when you heard, like, you know, we went through the room and said, how many of you plan to be with the company for 10 years? You saw one hand of like 150 people. And you heard 5 years, and then there were maybe 10. Most people believe that their run is about 3 years at a company. This new generation, it's 3 years. If you get 3 years out of them, God bless you. But let me tell you, the only way you're going to be able to compete for the best and brightest talent is to convince them. The succession plans are cool because they understand those are so far off and how it works. Who knows what the company is going to be at the time, bought, sold, whatever. It's going to be development. So they said companies that invest in MBAs, who are willing to pay for my education to prepare me to be more marketable, was what we heard. They said companies that invest in internal development, 360-degree feedback, executive coaching, people who are really going to teach me how to be an executive. You know, and I can tell you, sitting there as an HR executive, I'm sitting there saying, well, gosh, why would I want to spend all of that money to make you more marketable? And it does. It's sort of counterintuitive that you should be engaging in it. Well, let me tell you, it's the price to get in the game. That's what it is. Because your best and brightest talent have to be motivated, and they're being motivated these days by development. That if you spend time thinking about ways to make them better, they will remain with you. If you don't, most of you won't be able to attract them, and you definitely won't be able to keep them. This is a very, very, very different generation. This is a generation that saw, as I said, parents be laid off after parents and family members be laid off after significant amounts of their career given to a company. They saw parents and grandparents work for companies for 30 years, receive retiree health care, and then it be slashed 5 years after he or she retired. They're in a different mindset. This is about, what can the company do for me? What have you done for me lately? And what we have to do, very simply, is figure out how to deliver on that. That is the number one thing, and I'm now preaching this, convert to my folks. Development is the name of the game. Training and development, training to get them in the door, but developing talent, because that's how you keep them. If you want any hope of keeping people for 5 years, then it's the only way. We now have recently, I sat down with our CEO, and I tell you, as much as they're business people, sometimes they're not really business people. So I told him, I said, we're losing some talent in the finance area. I think we need to roll out, and this came out of my training and development executive who said we need to really invest in MBAs. We need to commit that for the next 3 or 4 years, we're going to commit to 10 sort of scholars every year. Let's find our brightest emerging talent in this organization, and let's invest in their MBAs. For a number of reasons. One, if we do so, we have them. In many ways. I mean, that's the one thing, while some people will leave, most of them, they're going to stay in the MBA program, and these things now are costing $100,000 to go to some of the best programs. We have them. And I said, so, you know, it's $50,000 a year. He said, I don't want to do that. I said, what do you mean you don't want to do that? So I don't want to do that. I think that's a lot of money. It's $100,000 to spend on someone, blah, 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 blah. I said, okay. So we lose one of the finance people, one of the controller guys over one of our key businesses, and I come to him and I said, he says, what will it do to save him? I said, well, he told us he'd save if we give him a $50,000 increase and a $100,000 retention bonus. He said, done. And, you know, I'm sitting there like, you know, the Geico guy, you know? I'm trying to get that little monkey right. But I just kind of thought, you all are supposed to be smart. You know, I'm the HR guy. Remember, I'm the one who's not smart. You're supposed to be smart. We're now prepared to spend $150,000, $50,000 in base increase. So now we've baked this into their base increase, and we have a $100,000 retention on the bonus. We've lost some loyalty because now this person knows the game. You know, the leverage is go get another job, come back and make you respond to it. So we're going to spend more money to get the same, no, less than what we would have had if we had gone and identified through a very thoughtful process of saying you're a superstar. We're going to invest $100,000 in you over the next 2 years. And by the way, if you leave in those next 2 years, you have to pay us back. So that's sort of part of your retention deal. And when you're finished with this MBA, we're going to look for an exciting opportunity for you within this organization. That's what it's about. We were unwilling to spend that simple money, those development dollars. And so what we as HR people and training and development professionals need to do is we need to start making business cases. I actually went back and identified, I had folks on my staff take all of the numbers of folks that we'd lost over the preceding 2 years, why we lost them, and most of them, surprisingly, were development. It wasn't people running into glass ceilings because people didn't care. They knew they were going to be at the company forever, but they wanted to know that we were committed to development developing them, helping them be more marketable in the event this company went away and they had to go to the marketplace. And that's the key. The other thing that I heard constantly was MBA programs we heard about. We heard about sort of, experiential programs where people get training rotations and they work in all of that. But the biggest one that I heard was real internal development. 360 degrees, executive coaching tools. These kids are sophisticated purchasers of this stuff. They want us, and I hate to be so colloquial about it, but they want us to invest. They want to know how to be better. They want to become very, very, very aware. This is a very aware population if you haven't gathered. And so they want to know their strengths, their weaknesses. You know, in past, people really didn't want to talk about their weaknesses. I mean, so much so that we call them developmental opportunities. They're weaknesses. That's what they are. How do you use the word strengths and unafraid to use the word weakness? It's a weakness. But these kids want to know. They shoot you straight in the eye and say, I want to know. I've had people look at me and say, listen, I'm never going to manage a lot of people because I don't like people. She said, but I'm brilliant. And so you need to figure out how to develop a career path around a brilliant person who does not want to manage people. Okay. Because we need some brilliant people. And by the way, all of you can't manage people. Everyone can't be an Indian chief. I need some individual contributors who are really good at what they do. And that's where HR becomes fun. When you're talking about transforming your talent into productive, high-performing assets, it's about doing that kind of work, figuring out who we have in our organizations and really, really developing them. We just recently are in the process of rolling off at our organization an executive development program. And it's not really executives. It goes pretty deep down in our organization because we are convinced that that's going to be game-changing for the organization. The only way, I knew I'm not going to have someone 5 or 10 years from now, but if I can get 3 good years out of them, and God forbid 4, then I'm doing really, really, really well. And that's how we plan our strategic sort of workforce readiness plans is around that. So train people well is what we've heard. We've specifically heard about developing well. And the final 2 are the ones that are obvious to you, but I'm going to talk about them treating people well. It's pretty obvious, but, it's not so obvious. It's the one thing my grandmother would say about common sense is the one thing that's not so common. And it really is that you need to treat people well. It's amazing to me that this sort of population, this new generation, and it's not, I'm talking generation, let me be big gaps of people. This is 25 to 40. They're no longer tolerating an environment where they are treated as sort of fungible assets. That day is long gone, and we're in a different world now, talking about a whole new world. It is one. And people want to be treated with respect and dignity, even when you have to let them go. Because guess what? This population now fully expects it. Someone told me the other day, I said, gosh, your area looks pretty barren. There's nothing on your desk. She said, I want to make it easy when you all make a change. You don't have to pack so many boxes. I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds horrible. And this is one of our high performers. So it's pretty sad that you're that cynical about the world. But Radio Shack, I was several months ago, I don't know if you heard about it, but Radio Shack, hope they're not here either, but laid off 403 employees via email. Email. I said, what? You mean the Radio Shack that has stores all over the place, which means they must have people all over the place to deliver a message personally, sent people an email? Can you imagine walking to your office that morning, turning on your computer, and if you don't read fast, you're in trouble because it came up on the computer. It's like, you have been fired. I'd be gone. I wouldn't have read. I'd read too slowly. But they, checked people out 3 minutes into the process. You've probably read about the companies making changes, and they've made these changes, and you're impacted. It's like, what? Computer will be shutting down in 12 minutes. You get your stuff and get out of here. That's literally what happened. So you all can imagine. I used to be a cursor because, if you grew up in South Florida, this is a real southern town. It used to be when I grew up here. So I've worked on my foul mouth because I used to curse all the time. But so they called me and said, CNBC and MSNBC said, we'd like you to come comment about that. And I said, this is going to be really tough. This is really, really going to be tough. Are you sure? I said, do they have sort of the Janet Jackson 7-second delay now? Just in case I start saying things. You can say bleep, 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 bleep. You can't bleep it fast enough because this is absurd that we would treat people this way. This is an organization, Radio Shack, we value our people. Oh, yeah. Well, maybe so, as long as they're our people. When they're not our people, we don't value them. But this is what they did. And then they asked themselves, they got it. But and then you ask yourselves, what's that all about? Why in the world would someone want to come work for an organization that would do anyone like that?